Okay, I welcome officers from the Broadband and Communications Infrastructure and NBN.
Good to see you.
And I'll hand over. Is there any opening statements from anyone? Opening statement?
G'day, how are you, Peter?
Mr Quigley has an opening
Mr. Quigley,
statement. We should be finished by 11.
Well, thank you, Minister. Senators?
That is true.
Order.
Once again, I appreciate the opportunity to be here today to brief you on the progress with the NBN project. I plan to give you a quick update on the company's growth and then perhaps highlight for you some of the key developments in the project since I was here last May. Our staff numbers have now grown to 304 employees. That was at the end of September. And in addition, we're employing 63 contractors at the end of the month. We continue to source highly qualified and skilled people from the telco, construction and utility sectors, as well as other sectors, of course. The majority of these people work out of our premises in Sydney and Melbourne, with the remainder based in our smaller offices in Hobart, Adelaide, Brisbane and Canberra. The board of the company, of NBN Co, recently signed off on our annual report for the first full year of our operations, including an unqualified report by our external auditor, the ANAO, on our consolidated financials. The annual report has been presented to our shareholder ministers and we expect it will be tabled in the near future. Work continues on our corporate plan and business model, and I will be presenting both these documents to the NBN Co board this coming Friday. We then expect to lodge these documents with our shareholder ministers a week later, subject, of course, to the board approval. As you know, our job is to build a network that can provide a suite of wholesale products to access seekers. This is a very complex engineering task. And in parallel with this task, we have been building a telco from the ground up, developing a business case and corporate plan, and working through some major commercial transactions and policy issues with government and industry regulators. We've continued our engagement with industry regarding our product design, and we continue to seek feedback from a wide range of stakeholders. We've now conducted more than 100 hours of what we call deep dive sessions with industry, and in August released for consultation a very detailed technical specification for our fibre access services, which incorporated feedback on our earlier wholesale product consultation paper. We've also recently released product overviews of our wireless and satellite access services, and in response to these papers we received some 18 submissions from our retail service providers. Most responses were supportive of the product construct and the approach that we proposed, and in fact there were no major issues that were identified. The first and second release sites will now be used to test the design and construction methodologies and our standard reference architect for our fibre network, as outlined in our papers. We're continuing to work on our wireless solution and a planned satellite solution for the balance of premises which lie beyond the fibre footprint. We are also developing an interim satellite solution until such times as our own satellites are launched and delivering services. In parallel with the design and planning process, we are developing our operational support systems and business support systems. These are not off-the-shelf software products, and they're quite critical to the successful operation of the network. They're very important for our customers to be able to access our network and systems in a very efficient way. So we're making, hopefully, life easy for our retail service provider customers. Our construction team have worked through the physical design on the ground in our pre-release trial in Tasmania and are doing the same thing again in our first release sites on the mainland now. Our procurement processes were, of course, slowed down somewhat during the election period from mid-July to early September, but we're now back on track with procurement. And perhaps if I can give you just a very quick summary of where the procurement status is up, since it's often of considerable interest. Our OSS and BS systems, we're now in negotiations with potential suppliers. Optical transmission equipment, which connects up the fibre access nodes, is about to be awarded. The volume rollout construction RFP, that's closes very shortly, and we expect quite a number of responsive. The passive hardware, that's all the fibre itself and the accessories, it's a substantial several $1 billion worth. We're currently evaluating the offers on that. Our data centres, we're negotiating contracts. Our wireless RFP we have just issued. Our satellite RFP, request for proposal for our first release, our interim satellite solution is now being developed, and our long-term satellite solution, we expect to issue the RFP next month. Moving now to construction on the first and second release sites. In July we announced, as you may recall, 19 locations for the next stage of our rollout on the mainland. These add to the existing announced first release sites, which were 5 on the mainland and 7 in Tasmania. These second release sites comprise 14 new locations and 5 sites adjacent to the first release sites. So the second release sites, some of them we're putting right next to the first. And we now have 4 retail service providers on board, and also Telstra has signed up a service agreement to provide services in Tasmania. Construction, as you know, is underway on these first release sites. Those release sites are in fact Armidale, Townsville, Wollonga in South Australia, Minamara, Kiama in south of Sydney, and Brunswick just outside Melbourne. And we make... Sorry? Sorry?
Just to... Can you finish your statement, then I'll take questions.
From me.
Not that that's a question, but keep going.
In other words, we're bored.
Yeah, Mr. Quigley, don't be diverted. Carry on.
You know it off by heart.
So construction's proceeding in all of those sites now, and it's a mixture of underground rollout and aerial rollout. We're making good and steady progress. We are in parallel, of course, seeking end-user consent from premises in each of those first release sites, and we're tracking the progress of the consent forms weekly, and those numbers are now running. As of last week, at Wollonga at 84% of premises have consented to connect, in Kiama 74%, Armidale 87%, Townsville 54%, and we expect that to take a kick up in the next couple of weeks. And in Brunswick we've only just started now, because that one was a little behind. That gives us an average across those 4 sites of some 77% of premises that have consented to connect. The work that we've done in the first release sites, plus lessons learned from the Tasmanian rollout, will help us to finalise the construction techniques and validate the network design and qualify the total end-to-end system. That, of course, happens in parallel with the full testing in our integration labs of our products. But there is no substitute for carrying out these live qualification in real environments. And that's why we've selected these different sites so that we get a range of different types of construction methodologies across Australia. The construction itself is structured in 3 stages. First of all, we deploy the passive components of the network, the fibre and the connectors and all of that type of gear. Then we deploy the active equipment, which lights up the fibre. It's the equipment that goes on both ends. And finally, we work with the retail service providers to hook up their systems into the overall system so that they can verify their end-to-end retail services. In supporting all of this, in July we announced the Docklands Melbourne location of our National Operations and Test Facility. The fit-out of that NOC has commenced, and the centre will be complete by about late April of next year. Implementation of our data centres was delayed during the caretaker period, but we expect to have the first one available in December of this year, and the second one is scheduled to be complete in March of next year. Sorry?
Mr. Quigley, continue on with your statement. Please don't answer questions until we go to questions. Senator Heffernan, we will do this as we have agreed.
So on a very important subject of safety, we're giving it, in fact, the highest priority in our rollout. We believe we're taking all the right steps to embed a safety culture across the organisation in what we do. Safety, in fact, is the first agenda item at our weekly management meetings and also at our monthly board meetings. The management team have instituted a monthly safety and quality leadership forum, which I chair. We have done process audits across all of our first release sites, and we now have contract auditors on site conducting safety audits on those first release sites as well. Employees are being trained in safe work methods, and we've done the first round of white card training for on-site safety. That's been now completed. So, if I can just mention Tasmania, in June we opened the NOC there. We went live on 12th of August. The project is on time and on budget, in fact slightly below budget. Stage 1 orders have now been received for 561 services to be delivered in 436 premises, and 262 of those premises are now active. We continue to work with the ACCC on our special access undertaking and wholesale broadband agreement. A facilities access agreement with all energy utilities within the first and second release sites is being developed, and that's also progressing well. Following the announcement in June of our heads of agreement with Telstra, we're now in detailed discussions in order to progress the definitive agreement, and we've established several joint working groups which now meet on a regular basis. That's between Telstra and NBN Co, working through all of the detailed issues. We've also finished a number of other consultation papers that we plan to release this month. One is on a wholesale broadband agreement, which provides information on NBN Co's non-discrimination commitments. We have a connections protocol paper which provides a high-level overview of the processes that the company and access seekers will need to follow to efficiently connect premises to the network, including requirements for forecasting, service qualification inquiries, placement of orders and scheduling of installation of NBN equipment. We have a paper on the points of interconnect which will be released in cooperation with the ACCC, in fact supporting their consultation process. And we have an access seeker onboarding and accreditation information paper which will outline the criteria for participating in a trial of our processes to ensure that customers and then end users receive a positive experience when connecting to the network. It will test out all the processes, procedures, systems and resources to deliver services to the market. So in conclusion, while the caretaker period created some delays in our activities, we're now continuing to make steady progress. We look forward to receiving advice from the government on some important policy issues so that we can finalise the design and implementation planning and the complex work of building and operating this wholesale NBN network. Thank you.
Thanks, Mr Quigley. Mr Quigley, I note that you've been reading off a prepared statement. Is that statement available for copy so senators can have a look at it? It's quite a detailed opening statement.
Yes, I see no problem. We'll just tidy it up a bit. It's got some of my scribble on it, so
okay.
We'll get it.
Yeah, thank you. Mr Harris,
or can we get some copies straight away? Because it was detailed and it would be helpful to us all
scribble is
to...
just correcting some words.
Yeah, if we could just get copies run off straight away, that would be helpful to all parties.
Yeah.
I hope you can
Thank
read
you.
it.
I'm sure Jackie will help us out.
Mr Harris, do you have an opening statement?
I do not.
Okay, thanks. Senator Williams.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah. Quickly, thank you for that detailed opening statement. I can see now how you won that stiff competition for the job application. Can I take you to Armidale? And did you say 87% take-up in the north-west area of Armidale?
Yeah, that's in the totality of the first release site that we're doing in Armidale.
Sorry?
That's in the totality of the first release site.
Yes, the first release site being that area in the north-west area of Armidale.
Yes, including the university.
How many hookups, including university premises, businesses and houses, were in that area in total?
I don't have those numbers to hand. Several thousand.
Several thousand?
The average of the first release sites is around about in the 2,000 to 3,000.
Right, 2,000 to 3,000 in that Armidale area, and 87% take-up.
Now, 87% consents to connect.
To have the fibre hooked to the premises, whether it be household or business or university or whatever. Okay. Was most of that just at the end once the Armidale Express on the 24th September started putting stories in like broadband offer is too good, so don't miss it out, and on the 1st of October the paper saying officials get behind high-speed broadband. Was it the publicity in the paper that actually stirred along, or was it your marketing plan prior to that?
I suspect it was a combination of all of those things.
How did you market in the first place? Was it letter drops?
Letter drops was how it started, yes.
Yeah. Because one report said perhaps NBN had sold the offer poorly. So 87% take-up. Now,
Sounds like it was a total failure.
what was the age demographic of these people that took it up, do you know? I mean, they've taken the fibre to their premises. It doesn't mean they're going to hook to the fast broadband, of course, but it's up to their premises.
The retail services are provided by retail service providers.
Yes.
So they have the relationship with the end
We're
customer.
talking 87% of those people took the fibre to their premises. That does not mean they've actually hooked to the fast download, does it?
There isn't a network there yet.
Right. So that's still in progress. So but even those ones who did take it up doesn't mean they have to hook to it. That's their option, right?
That's their option, of course.
Yeah, exactly. You wouldn't have any idea how many people have indicated they will take it up, have you?
We haven't asked the question, no. It's, what we're interested at this point in time is building the network. Then as we go through the process, which I outlined in the opening statement, and it's up to the retail service providers to... they're going to market their actual retail service, and that will be a range of services.
Do you know any of the age demographic makeup of those residents? Minister shaking his head, obviously
No, I'm
not.
afraid I
I
don't.
can't imagine why we would.
Well, it might be a variance, Minister. I would think that perhaps our elderly residents may not be interested in it because they may not have ever had a computer.
I think you shouldn't be ageist, Senator Williams. I think you'll find some of the most avid consumers
I'm
of
aware
the
of
internet
that.
are aged. Even people as old as you.
I'm well aware that I have
are,
many friends
interested
that
in the
are
internet.
in their 80s that have taken up the computer
Absolutely.
and are very good on it.
Even some as old as you.
Some as old as who?
You.
I said, give me a break, you're a little younger than me.
Well, I would hope I'm younger than you.
I mean, I know, notwithstanding the fact you're sitting there without your computer, I know you've been even using it today.
We won't go there. Now, okay, 87% have taken the fibre to their homes. Minister, you might answer this. What will be their cost if they take up the connection of the 100 megs download per month?
Look, this is an issue that has been discussed at considerable length across the country. Tasmania is the only place at this stage where the network is live. In Tasmania, we have, and firstly, we are a wholesale company, so we don't provide retail.
So it'd be good if you could
pricing.
break it out. What is the wholesale price you are charging, NBN, and what is has the retailer been charging on top?
Williams, let the Minister
Thank
answer
you.
the question.
I'm trying to
At this
help
stage,
you,
But
Chair.
no,
and
don't try and help.
Mr Quigley might
unhelpful.
correct me, but at this stage, I don't think NBN has determined a wholesale price on the mainland.
No, we certainly haven't announced one.
Well, the business plan is coming to us very shortly. I'm sure within that there is some information on that matter, but it's not public yet.
So you
in Tasmania, we provided a wholesale offer, and retailers have been charging prices, and there's a variety of prices for a variety of different packages. So in Tasmania, as an example, Internode, I think are charging for 25 meg download speeds. They're charging about $49.95, so that's $50. IINet charging...
That includes the wholesale, rental and the retail made up of two pieces.
Internode, well, this is the retail price, which by definition contains the wholesale element.
Yep.
So Internode, I believe, are charging $30 for 25 meg. Primus are charging... Now, they've got a 6-month offer, but if you go to the 12-month full offer, they're charging, I think, about $90 for all your phone calls plus 25 meg, including phone calls to mobile. Now, to give you a comparison, Telstra charged about did charge about $130, as against the Primus' $90. So on a package for package, you can see clearly there's a saving. Now, having said that, the point I always make when I give those figures is these are introductory prices and won't necessarily be reflected on the mainland. These are based on an introductory wholesale price by NBN Co in Tasmania.
So you quoted prices then of 25 megs download. What are the prices of 100 megs download? Can you quote any of those?
Not off the top of my head. I do believe some customers have now taken offers of 100 megs. I'm just looking at some information. $59.95 per month for 100 megabits. Yeah, that's right. Internode, I think, are offering that. So it's $60 a month for 100 meg.
Yeah. Thanks, Chair.
Okay, thank you. I think Senator, what's it called?
Yep, thanks.
Senator Fisher?
Thank you, Chair. Minister, you referred to NBNCO's business plan coming to the government shortly. Will you be making the business plan public, and if so, when? And if not, why not?
I admire your consistency, Senator Fisher. A whole range of information within the business plan will be made available. There may be some issues that are commercial in confidence or that can be reverse engineered that perhaps NBNCO doesn't want to be reverse engineered, but I'm sure you'll be very satisfied with the information that will be provided. Actual date, I think Mr Quigley's going overseas shortly. When he comes back, he then, with myself, will brief my Cabinet colleagues, and information will be available reasonably soon after that. If you want me to give you an exact date, I can't at this stage. It just depends on when Cabinet can receive the briefing.
In terms of the business plan, what will be made public, Minister?
Well, once I've received it, I'll be in a better position to answer that question.
Will it be a copy of the business plan with bits blacked out? Will it be your editorialised version of the business plan?
As I said, once I've received it, I'll be in a better position to answer you.
Mr Quigley earlier indicated in the press, I think, that he was reviewing the business plan in light of the government's agreement with the independents in the House of Reps. Has the business plan been so reviewed, and is that the version that you'll be forwarding to the Minister, Mr Quigley?
Yes, Senator Fisher, it will be. We've done our best to review the plan, the rollout plan, and reflect our understanding of the government's wishes into that plan.
So no further work to be done on it?
I wouldn't say that. I've yet to present it to the board on Friday. They may ask a whole variety of work to be done on it.
No further work to be done on it once you decide to submit it to the Minister in the near future?
As with any company, normally a business plan is constantly being reviewed.
Do you expect that the business plan will need to be reviewed or rewritten in light of the agreement that the government proposes to reach with Telstra, if and when that agreement actually reaches an agreement stage?
I think certainly myself and the board would anticipate that the shareholder government would have some comments on the business plan and may ask us to think about different aspects which we would then incorporate into the business plan in due course.
So it's likely that the business plan would need rewriting post-agreement with Telstra, is that right?
Post-agreement with Telstra? No, we have in our business plan made certain assumptions about the heads of agreement. We have, as you would expect, various scenarios. All of those are included in the business plan.
Can you tell us the range of assumptions and scenarios?
No.
Oh, well, you've got to try, haven't you? So, do you expect that the realisation of one or some of those would result in rewriting of the business plan? Would we be back to square one, Mr Quigley?
Back to square one? No, there's been a lot of work done, Senator Fisher. I expect there to be some tunings and maybe some questions about certain assumptions. And this is a complex document. It's a complex project, so I expect there to be some queries and there may be some comments, and we may need to do some fine-tuning, as you would expect. We may need to do that after the board meeting this Friday and, in fact, before the submission to government. I can't presume that the board is necessarily going to endorse the plan that the management has developed and will put before it.
So what would be the earliest that the government might get the penultimate business plan from NBNCO?
Friday week, end of October.
What's a penultimate business plan?
Well, Mr Quigley has said it would be reviewed perhaps in light of a Telstra agreement. So
No,
you didn't hear that.
What's the earliest that the business plan would be provided to the government, Mr Quigley?
End of October.
All right. What's the latest?
That I can't answer. It would depend on I can't presume what NBNCO board will ask me to do after they review it this Friday.
All right. Okay. Thank you. The Minister made a joint statement with the Prime Minister and the Tasmanian Premier in July, which I'm sure we all recall, 25 July 2009, that Tasmanian NBN Co would be a new company which will be established and jointly owned by NBN Co and Aurora Energy. What's happened to that joint venture? Has it been formed?
Look, there's been two elections along the way, unfortunately, that have slowed that down. So the work has, by and large, gone on, irrespective of that agreement being finalised. I'm seeing the Premier of Tasmania very shortly to have some further discussions with him about it.
So why haven't you reached agreement yet with the Tasmanian Government, Minister? It's all hastening very slowly.
Now, the work's actually continued quite fast.
We'll talk about that.
So nothing's hastening slowly other than the discussions between the two governments, but it actually hasn't impacted on the work of NBN Co or NBN Co at all. And in fact, I said in a press release in October and a press conference in October last year that we'd have live services in the first week or two of July, and that's exactly what we did.
So does that mean...
In actual fact, the build has been on target, as Mr Quigley said publicly, under budget.
If it doesn't matter to what's happening on the ground, then does that mean that the government won't be bothering with what you said would be a joint venture between NBN Co and Aurora Energy?
As I just said, I'm actually meeting the Premier of Tasmania in the next few days.
So you still think it'll come to fruition even though you haven't reached agreement yet?
Oh, well, I don't want to preempt the outcome of the discussions, Senator Fisher.
Have any concerns been raised about Tasmania NBN Co's separate profile, including its web presence and agency relationship with Aurora Energy?
I'm not sure what you mean, Senator Fisher.
Has the NBN board sought to bring the Tasmanian NBN Co to heel, if you like, by bringing its contracting arrangements into line with NBN Co's national contracting procedures by excluding Aurora Energy as an agent for NBN Co?
Sorry, did you say excluding?
By excluding Aurora Energy as an agent for NBN Co?
Not that I'm aware of, and from the look on Mr Quigley's face, I don't think he's aware of that either.
So that hasn't been raised, Mr Quigley.
If I can finish my answer, Senator Fisher, let me be clear.
Yes, Minister.
Let me be clear. NBN Co Tasmania was established to proceed with the Tasmanian rollout. The national rollout is now well underway, and the rollouts will ultimately be consistent with each other. To give you a very simple explanation, the OSS and BSS in Tasmania will ultimately have to be the same as national. So there's a whole range of reasons why the rollouts have to take place in very, very close coordination. So the arrangements between Tas, NBN Co and NBN Co are very much on a working closely together relationship.
So is Aurora included in Tasmania NBN Co and its activities?
No, Aurora is a separate company that contracts to it.
Because, of course, the joint venture hasn't happened yet, has it?
Correct. So Aurora is a separate entity that is a contractor to NBN Co and has not been, and no one, and I'm happy to be corrected, Mr Quigley, no one has ever suggested that it would be excluded from applying to be a contractor or in a tender.
No concerns have been raised at any NBN Co discussions, Mr Quigley, at board level, for example, about Tasmania NBN Co's fascination about proposed relationship with Aurora Energy.
I'm sure you don't expect Mr Quigley to
he can
reveal to you any discussions at any stage about what is discussed at NBN Co's board.
Mr Quigley?
I'm not at liberty to talk about discussions that take place at NBN Co's board, Senator.
All right. The Tascolt Fibre home trial that Aurora Energy undertook in 2007-2008. Did Aurora add value to that rollout?
Sorry, if you just a second.
Just germane to what your question, Senator. We've in fact just signed up Aurora as our agent for the what we're calling the first release site, the 7 sites under Stage 2 in Tasmania. So
NBN,
that's the same operation.
They've been excluded brilliantly.
So NBN Co has signed them up, but not NBN Co.
The NBN Tasmania is a 100% subsidiary. We work absolutely hand in glove, as you would expect us to.
Are there any differences in take-up results between the TasColt fibre trial rollout and the rollout of the take-up of services?
Sorry,
NBN?
she needs to finish the question because could you just repeat the question?
How do the results in terms of take-up by consumers of the initial NBN rollout?
TasColt is a separate thing that
different
happened.
from TasColt.
Well, TasColt was something organised by the Tasmanian government, Aurora, and another
so
agency.
how popular was it?
I have no idea.
All right.
So my point is I can't compare it because I don't know what those statistics were at the time.
Okay. Mr. Quigley, have you had any discussions, for example, with Mr. Harris about the...
Sorry, Peter Harris?
Yes. Or Mr. Harris might choose to answer, about the suitability of 700 megahertz spectrum for NBN's wireless broadband service, whether or not that would be... Have you had any discussions about whether 700 megahertz
would you like to ask a question?
would be available for that purpose?
Could you phrase this as a question? You can't ask 2 officers at the table to reveal to you their private
Mr.
conversations.
Quigley, my question is of you,
ask
Mr.
a specific question. Don't ask, have you had a conversation?
Mr. Quigley, has it been raised with you? Mr. Quigley, has it been raised with you a question as to whether or not the 700 megahertz spectrum would be readily available for NBN's wireless broadband service?
It won't be available.
All right. Has it been
Unless,
raised...
NBN choose to bid on it. But I think that's unlikely.
So is the view that, for example, NBN Co's wireless service could be offered in the 2.3 gigahertz band?
Well, there's a range of options that are possible. Mr. Quigley might want to...
Yep, there's a range of spectrum. I mean, obviously, we're providing a fixed... once again, if I can stress, this is a fixed wireless service, not a mobile service.
Yeah.
Fixed wireless service. There's a range of spectrum options. We're continuing to look at each of those.
Okay, so 2.3 gigahertz is a possibility. That's one of the options.
2.3 gigahertz is a possibility. Yes.
Yeah, and Minister, that's an option in your mind?
If the spectrum was available.
The Opel network was offered in that frequency, I understand. And of course, you
There's
described that
claims.
as a dog, Minister.
Yeah, that was a dog. It was because up until... But let me just put it this way. I think
wouldn't the NBN be barking if it were delivered in the same spectrum?
Senator Fisher, the Minister started to answer you, and you immediately...
There's three different parts to the answer, Senator Fisher. Firstly, Opel was without spectrum for 99% of its life. So from the day it was before the election until very, very shortly before the changeover in government, Opel had no spectrum. It was planning, and it was admitted publicly that it would be operating in unlicensed spectrum. So in unlicensed spectrum, it was worse than a dog. It then signed an agreement, I understand, which wasn't a completely finalised agreement because there was a range of compatibility issues that were never resolved between Austar and Unwired. Unwired are the company that have the Metro 2.3 spectrum, and they have a caveat, I understand. They have a caveat on it that the network to be built... Just waiting for you to finish talking.
Thank you.
A network to be built that was compatible, and unfortunately the dog that was being proposed by your former government was not a compatible network with the network that had been built by Unwired. So it is possible to claim the Opel network was going to use that spectrum, but it was never actually finally commercially agreed because there was a range of caveats. That's the first point. Secondly, you do understand the difference between a mobile network and a fixed wireless network.
We're going to be here till 11 o'clock.
No, I just want to make sure, because I'll need to explain to you the different properties.
Yes, perhaps better than the government.
What, you understand better than the government?
Perhaps.
Well, you announced you were building a fixed wireless network, but you all keep talking about
we're going to be here
a
until
mobile
11
network.
o'clock easily, Minister. Thank you. I'm happy
I know
with
we're going
your
to be here
answer.
till 11 o'clock.
Can we move on?
I'm happy to move on to your next question.
Thank you. Good. When will the Competition and Consumer Legislation Amendment Bill be reintroduced into the House of Reps?
I think it's tomorrow. Rumour has it it's tomorrow. It went through caucus
okay.
today.
Okay. Good. Good. Thank you. When will a definitive agreement be reached with Telstra?
When it's reached. Well, I think Telstra shareholders probably are above you in the food chain to find out, Senator McDonald.
Mr.
As is appropriate under the
taxpayers' money.
as is appropriate under the corporations
money you're
law.
flashing around.
As is appropriate under the corporations law.
Mr. Harris, what's your view as to when a definitive agreement will be reached?
I work for the Minister, Senator.
When it requires finalisation by an extraordinary general meeting of Telstra shareholders, doesn't it?
It requires a vote, yes.
Yeah. So when can Telstra have its first meeting post presuming passage of the legislation?
You have to ask Telstra.
All right, so doesn't that concern the government?
Well, Telstra have to...
Unless and until you have that, you have no deal, Minister.
Telstra has to comply with the corporations law, Senator Fisher. So there are legal requirements about when they can hold...
But it affects your time frame, Minister, and the finalisation of an agreement. So surely it's a factor of concern to you.
Let's be clear here. The building and construction of the National Broadband Network continues at a growing pace. So the Telstra deal is a component of the overall situation, but the construction of the National Broadband Network goes on irrespective. So I'm not quite sure what your point of your question was.
What are the implications of the non-finalisation of the deal with Telstra? What are the implications of... assume that your deal does get finalised with Telstra.
What are the implications of nuclear war?
Well, you're starting to suggest that it doesn't matter, Minister. I presume it does.
You're asking hypotheticals. Would you like to ask a question?
What are the implications of delaying the finalisation of the government's announced deal with Telstra? What are the implications?
What are the implications of global warming? Why don't you ask a question of fact rather than a hypothetical?
Well, that used to be the greatest moral challenge of our time, but the Prime Minister's... I just want to move to prices, and you touched on it earlier, prices in Tasmania, and part of what I understand to be the Prime Minister's agreement with the independents, and the annexure to that agreement which noted high-speed broadband services are available in Tasmania for around $60 per month currently, based on wholesale prices, which will now be applied on a national basis. To what wholesale prices was the Prime Minister referring? And How much?
She was referring to the fact that there will be one wholesale price.
So that'll be $60 a month, will it?
No, what you're, and I can understand why you are possibly confused. The $60 was just an indicative figure coming out of Tasmania. The wholesale price will be determined by the National Broadband Network. As part of his business plan, they'll be supplying to us.
So you don't think that led people to conclude that there'd be a national price of $60?
Well, the problem is there's going to be a raft of products. So for anyone to assume that there'll only be one national wholesale price would be a rather unusual assumption. There'll be a suite of products with different wholesale prices.
So what then? So Mr. Quigley, you told Senate estimates in May, if I'm correct, that Tasmania NBN Co was charging retail service providers a one-off $300 connection fee. And so, for a limited period of time and for a limited number of premises, we're charging just the connection fee, I think you said.
Also said that the connection fee was waived in some instances.
Yes. Yes. So does that mean that nationally, some retail service, for the national rollout, some retail service providers will be charged a one-off connection fee?
I also said at the time, Senator Fisher, that...
and no monthly tariff?
You shouldn't draw any conclusions about the national pricing on the basis of the Tasmanian pre-release trial.
All right.
I wouldn't draw any...
That's what he said in May.
Yes.
Yes, of course. And I've said consistently these are introductory offers in Tasmania and shouldn't be assumed as prices that would apply in the mainland ultimately. We've said that every single time we've been asked that question.
You're looking very worried, Minister.
Yeah? Okay.
I'll get to you.
Now, can I take you to the heads of agreement, the intended heads of agreement with Telstra, the $11 billion heads of agreement. Can you confirm that that's part of the $43 billion cost to build the NBN? Hansard doesn't recall roll of the eyes, Minister.
The heads of agreement, $11 billion, is within the envelope. And to save you time, it's within the envelope of the $27 billion that talked about as government funds.
Okay, so...
Oh, sorry, $9 billion of that is.
I was going to say, so $2 billion is direct from the government.
$2 billion is, no, $2 billion comes from a number of issues. Mr Harris he's eager to make a contribution, so I'll let him take you through.
I think there's a little bit of clarification that's quite important here. The $2 billion is a Telstra estimate,
right,
of the value of a set of agreements which are aligned around network obligations that are not likely to be picked up by NBN Co. So the Universal Service Obligation Company, USO Co, being a good example of that. But it is a Telstra estimate that was published. This is not a question of the government endorsing a particular figure at this point in time.
All right, so it's an estimate, but nonetheless, is there a certain amount that will be left over and have to be found from other than NBN Co?
The separate funding applies here, if that's the intent of your question, for the USO Co.
Okay, and so from where will it come?
It'll be
the separate funding.
It'll be
in the budget.
Government funding.
So it is.
It's already in the budget figures that were released prior to the election.
So you're saying whether it's 9 mil or 11? Sorry, 9 bill or 11 bill.
Again, you clearly didn't understand, and perhaps Mr Harris might want to explain it again.
In the May budget, the government took account of its obligations towards that USOCO concept. So in the May budget.
It's all listed in line items.
All right. Of the library note infamously released during the election campaign...
Sorry, the what?
The library note. I'm sure you recall, or you were quoted referring to it, Minister, and no doubt you'll tell us whether correctly or not. By the Parliamentary Library on the NBN funding.
You would have to ask them on what basis they created those figures.
Well, you did dispute the figures,
Yes,
so I hear
you'll
you're
have
still
to ask-
doing so.
You'll have to ask them on what basis they created those figures. We are not responsible for them. They're not correct, and we can't answer any questions about them.
Well, have you demanded a correction because your campaign spokeswoman said you would?
We're getting on with building the network.
Well,
The information was inaccurate and incorrect, and we've got on with building the network.
which parts were inaccurate and which parts were incorrect, given that it forecast a $6 billion hole?
Look, I'd have to take that on notice for you.
That, I guess I have to accept that, Minister, but I find that disingenuous, given that during the election campaign you were very ready to say, as you have repeated today, that it's littered with errors.
It was completely wrong.
Misleading and includes errors. Well, if it's completely wrong, it must be pretty damn easy for you to point out where it's completely wrong and publicly do so.
It was flawed and inaccurate, but I don't have all the details with me, and I'll take it on notice and get back to you.
All right. Thank you. Chair, I have one more set of questions, and then I think Senator Birmingham after me, if that's all right.
Pricing issue that we've leapt over. Thanks. Thank you for your indulgence. Thank you, Chair. Going back to your previous discussion, Mr Quigley, about the uniform pricing agreement, can you outline what the benefits for consumers will be of that agreement, to have the uniform wholesale price?
The advantage, Senator, to uniform pricing is that it doesn't matter where somebody lives across the nation, they have the opportunity for their retail service provider to have the same price no matter where they are. Now, we, of course, in NBN Co can't guarantee that there will be uniform national retail pricing, but what we can do is make our best efforts to make sure that that's as simple as possible by having one uniform price across the country, which I understand is the government's intention, and then to try and create the same processes, the same systems, the same points of interconnect, all of those things, so that there is no barriers to a retail service provider offering equivalent prices right across the country for the same level of service.
And then will that increase competition amongst the
Absolutely,
retailers?
absolutely. In today's copper network, there is a small percentage of exchanges in which there's competitive equipment, simply because it's just simply too expensive to get in other parts of Australia. We hope to eliminate that problem.
Okay. And so will it benefit the percentage of Australians who will get wireless or satellite services, who don't get the fibre?
Yes, we're looking to have. It's always difficult to say exactly where the boundary is between wireless and satellite and fibre. We're hoping in a given catchment area of premises that will make it easy for a retail service provider to offer their services no matter what technology that premise is on. So we expect that to make quite a difference to the types of services that can be offered, especially into rural Australia.
So regardless of what platform they're on?
Yep. Now, there are